have come to a Voice UX event so far? Awesome. So a lot of new people in the crowd tonight. That's amazing. If you guys don't know, I'm from Bot Society. My name is Bianca. We're a conversation design solution. So if you're designing for voice or messaging experiences, you're welcome to check us out. We support Slack, WhatsApp, Google Assistant, Alexa, anything that's really conversational we can support. We're a web tool, so if you have any more questions or you're looking to get started with that, definitely come find me. Beyond that, if you're working on something special in voice and you're really passionate about it and you're looking for an outlet to tell your story, we do a lot of that. So if you have something that you would like to put on our blog, we have an audience of 77,000 people, and we'd love to share your story. So if you're interested in that offering, definitely come find me after the event. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Andre. Andre's going to be speaking with us from Mozilla, and he has a really interesting presentation for you guys. I hope you enjoy.
Hello, everyone. Good night. First of all, I'm from Brazil, so expect a lot of accent in this talk. So I am a speech engineer here at Mozilla. Just to give you guys an overview, at Mozilla we have quite a few teams who work with speech. We have a machine learning team, building the neural nets, building the decoders, building the TTS and the platform. And we have some application team, like my team, we implement speech on different products. And we have a UX and research on user interfaces for voice. So I'm not seeing anyone from our UX team here, but I'm going to give you guys an overview about everything we are doing here, okay? So I'm going to start with our products, okay? What we are doing, what Mozilla is, which Mozilla products are speech-enabled. Starting with Firefox, okay? We have something called VoiceFill. VoiceFill, it is a web extension that you can install on Firefox as an add-on, so you can enable your search engines with to do voice search. It's similar to what Chrome has, but with a different twist. Rather than having speech only on Google search pages, we enable on DuckDuckGo, Yahoo, and Google itself. So this project started around 1 year and a half ago, and it started as a test pilot project. So test pilot is a framework that we use to have here at Mozilla, where we first deploy your product for a small audience, and then you will learn after the findings that you collect from them, you decide if that project should make or not into Firefox. So VoiceFill was one of them. We collected a lot of feedback from our users in terms of usability, and the most important ones was they're gonna give you two chances, right? After they install the extension in the browser, they're gonna try twice. If it doesn't work, they're gonna give up. So after having that, landed and moved to our Mozilla add-ons, there's a platform that we have to install add-ons on Firefox. We decided that, okay, the best way of doing that is if you use the best decoder ever. So we decided to use Google as a decoder for this specific product. And after we switched it to Google, the usage skyrocket. We are having around 3,000 daily active users, and we support around 140 languages, all the same language that Google support. So our users, they love this extension. We have around 5 stars, 4.85 to 5 stars on Mozilla add-ons. And one of the findings was that they want to move that to the address bar. Right now, if you see in this page, you see the icon is right next to the search page, to the search bar on the Google itself, on the Google page itself. But they want to move this to the browser itself, to the add-on frame. So the next product I want to talk here is about Firefox Reality. That's different perspective of what you are using with. So Firefox Reality is a virtual reality browser for Oculus Go and for virtual reality devices, okay? This is a very complicated scenario and environment, so you can apply speech. Because some people say, okay, we want to use local commands and to control the scene. Because wonder if you're wearing a head-mounted device, right, in your eyes, and you don't have any screen to type, right? It's typing in this in the VR environment is super hard, cumbersome, and takes a long time. After we did some UX research with our users, one of the things they asked, we actually assumed it in the beginning, was that they want to control the browser itself, like going back, going forward, and open a new tab. But in the end, what they asked most was voice search. Because you can type, this scenario, I wanted to type, 4 words on VR. It's, you're gonna have a lot of, strain, your hand's going to get strained real quick because, you need to project a keyboard in the screen and move the controller to type each, word, and that takes a long time. Typing character by character, like I said, 4 words, that's going to take a long time, and usually they're gonna give up. So we started with voice search in this product, and around 30% of the searches in this on Firefox Reality are made through voice. We found that one of the things the user they want most is more bilingual, because this is not only multilingual actually, because we started with English. And we ended releasing Firefox Reality on different audiences like Japan, France, we're having Spain, Germany, and we're starting to implement other languages as well. So for the future, probably we're gonna be doing also local commands like to control the scene, like going back and forth, like I mentioned initially, and controlling the tabs and control your own experience rather than only voice search. But this number, this 30%, around 30% searches on Firefox Reality matches the same number that we are getting on VoiceView and Chrome itself. So Google claims that on Android, around 25 to 30% of searches happens through voice on Android, and I also heard some numbers on desktop as well. So, and we are seeing similar numbers both on Firefox Reality and on VoiceView. So next product here is Firefox on Fire TV. Same story. We released recently a browser on Firefox TV, on Fire TV, sorry. That's the Alexa, for the Alexa voice search on Alexa device, not only Fire TV, but we also have on Echo Show. And we are seeing similar numbers, and around 25% to 30% are made through voice. So it's very interesting to see that 1/3 of searches on different platforms and modalities are being made through voice. We have some plans about this product that I mean, unfortunately I can't mention much, but we are going to expand our speech capabilities on Echo devices as well. So next one is Pocket Listening. This was unbelievable. It was huge. The acceptance of this feature on Pocket was huge. Who here knows what Pocket is? So Pocket is like, to give an overview, it's like it's used to be called Save It Later. It's like a bookmark app, so you can navigate through Firefox, and then you can save your articles to read later. So before this implementation that we recently implemented, we used to use the own OS TTS system, right, from Android or iOS itself. After we switched to a better TTS system with more natural voice, the usage skyrocketed again. So we can see that a better TTS, it makes you retain your users more. So not only ASR, but also TTS is something that we found that's something super important, so you can retain your users. I don't know the numbers about how many users are actually asking to listen to their articles, but I know they almost made our servers to crash when they released that. Yeah. So Firefox Reader Mode, this is similar to Pocket, but in the browser itself, in the desktop browser. So you can read your articles, and you're going to have them narrated to you in the desktop environment. And if I'm not sure, but I believe in this specific case, we are using the OS TTS capabilities, different than Pocket, where we use our own TTS and our own backend to do that. But for Firefox Reader mode, we are using the own OS system. So if you're using, if you're on OS 10 or Windows and whatever, it's going to use the desktop, the OS TTS capabilities. So Firefox listing. So this is one of the projects that we are launching soon, and this is going to be very cool. Basically, I'm going to try to, in a couple of sentences to, try to explain what this is going to be. We are going to build a voice browser, which you're going to be able to control it using your own voice. Not only voice, but conversational interfaces in general. You're going to be able to read articles through the web just by, in a conversational manner, like either, typing or through your voice. So the goal here, we're probably gonna launch this in, by the end of this quarter, and it's going to be a mix of what you have on Pocket with other initiatives that you have here at Mozilla. So this is something you don't see anyone doing yet, like being able to query the web in a way rather than browsing the web. That's a project that I'm trying to implement here. That right now, if you go to the web, you need to browse. Right, and we are seeing a lot of users in our research is asking us to query the web, right? Like, asking something and you get the answer like an assistant. But right now, if you go to assistant environments like Google Assistant or Siri, you are, bounded by what they want to display you. And in this specific case, we are going to speech enable the web. So that's one of the goals with Firefox listing. And the Web of Things gateway. Who here knows what Web of Things Gateway? Just Cassie. Cassie is the PM of this project. That's why. This is very close to my heart. This is one of the projects I am involved with since the beginning. Again, here at Mozilla, we have this twist of being open source, right? To the community. And this is an IoT gateway where you can connect your things in an open way. Different than Alexa or Google Home, where they have their own closed environments, and where you need to use their own protocols. We are building an open source IoT gateway, where you can not only develop your own things and connect to the gateway itself, but also you can just go and buy things in the market like Philips Hue bulbs or Z-Waves Zigbee devices and connect to the gateway itself, right? So I mean, IoT, right, 2019, it needs to be controlled by voice, right? So if you need to go to the website to turn off your lights, it's just go to the outlet, walk to the outlet and turn it on, right? It makes no sense at all. And even going online, like, it's going to be the most expensive, light switch in the world. If you need to go to the cloud, just to turn off your light. It doesn't make any sense, right? So in this specific project, I can talk to you later after the talk and give you more details, and Cass is going to be here to explain. But we are building a local voice processed device. With the speech is going to be processed locally in the device itself. It's not going to go to the cloud like Alexa and Google they are doing. So the whole speech, the whole conversational happens locally in the Raspberry Pi. So we have a device in the other room here. Kathy can show you, who is interested here, if anyone is interested in seeing that. But it's very cool because it's not only private first, but it's also, super performance. The performance is way better than Alexa because it's happening locally in your own device. And also, for sure, it's cheaper. You don't even need an internet connection to control your home, right? So Kathy is here. Raise your hand again, Kathy, so people can see you. All right, so this is an overview about the projects. We have other projects coming on this year. Stay tuned on Mozilla.com, and we're probably going to release some other projects later this year. But I'm going to give you an overview around the voice platforms that we are building here. So first one is Deep Speech. Deep Speech is a speech decoder based on Baidu's Deep Speech paper, which is 100% is end-to-end neural nets decoders, so developers and researchers can build their own, speech engines using their own data. It's like open source again, based on TensorFlow. We have Josh here from Deep Speech team. If you guys have any questions, you can just ask him later. And yes, it's open source. It's super popular on GitHub. How many stars on GitHub? 10,000. Yeah, super popular project on GitHub. It's getting a lot of traction. So second, this is how it works. So basically, collecting the voices and inputting, your voice data, and then you train using the neural nets and based on TensorFlow, and you're gonna have your own speech decoder in-house. So common voice. Common voice is like, the title says, it's a crowdsourcing voice data collection. It's a website where you can just go and donate your voice or collect the voice and actually download the voice from the contributor so you can build your own models. In this case, you can use Deep Speech or whatever else you are interested. So what's the motivation behind Common Voice? To build, it was always hard to have data to build your own decoders, right? So it was always super complicated to collect. Not only you need either to buy or what you had open source, it is not, not enough. So the motivation behind Common Voice was to empower the community of developers and researchers so you can collect, using Mozilla's force to collect enough data and to ask the community to donate data so you can train, so the researchers can use to train their own models. So this was super popular project last year. We released it in, I think it was end of 2017, something like that. And it won this award from Fast Company, like the design award. The interface is super cool, and I suggest anyone here to go and donate your voice so you can empower the community. So far 90 languages, 21 launched, and 69 in progress. So that means we have 21 languages, if I know correctly, already transcribed it, localize it so people can donate, and 69, requiring need of people to go and actually localize those sentences so you can record. So these are ones of the languages that we support so far. I think these are the ones actually already being recorded right now, available to get sentences. So you can go to voice.mozilla.org, and so you can contribute with your own voice. So, and Firefox Web Speech API. So this is another topic that I want to, give some highlight here what we're doing. So right now, the only way to build speech-enabled websites is if you use Chrome, right? So that's the only browser who actually right now supports the Web Speech API for speech to text. TTS, it's very well adopted. A lot of browsers already support. But in terms of speech to text, it's only Chrome. So there's an initiative here inside Mozilla, and part of this team, we are implementing the Web Speech API in the browser by default. So target end of February. So one use case for Web Speech API is, for example, Duolingo. Duolingo, they have a capability so you can test your English or you can speak some sentences, and it's going to tell you if that's correct or not. And right now, this works only on Chrome. This is one use case where the speech-powered web, right? So right now, if you see speech, it is very siloed. Like you have either on your phone or you have either on your Alexa. But the web, is still lacking of speech-enabled apps. And this is one of the things we're trying to pursue here at Mozilla and bring more speech capabilities and empower the developers to speech-enable their websites. And Duolingo is one of these use cases where they manage to enable their website with good speech capabilities. So as I said, supports only on Chrome and Chrome for Android for sure. And yes, Firefox is going to be green here as well. And same for TTS. TTS only Internet Explorer, and and all the rest they support. So you can see more about Web Speech API on MDN, and I think that's it. All right, thank you very much.
I think we can take questions at the end. So if you guys have any questions for Andre, how many people have questions just to get a sample? We can do 3 right now if you want. You got 10 minutes. Okay, cool. So we'll take 3 questions, and if you guys have any additional questions, we'll take them after the presentation. So first person. Here.
Hello. Thank you. How do you decide? How do you decide which products to vocalize or to make speech APIs, or how do you think of, what kind of user experiences are conducive to speech interfaces?
Yeah, you mean in terms of projects we are having here in Mozilla? Which ones we decide that are requiring speech first?
Yeah, I'm just curious.
So before we have our UX team, we have a research. Actually, before deciding the project we are going to speech enable, we have a lot of UI research with actual users. We do some interviews and ask them, we interview them, by what would be more useful for them to have speech in specific products, right? For example, Firefox. We demonstrate to them, okay, we have these specific product. How would be good, how would you think would be useful for you to speech enable it? And it's very straightforward. So, and after we collect the feedback from these interviews with the users, we start to prototype. And after prototyping, we bring these prototypes to the same set. We start with some set of users, both internally and externally, and collect feedback and start incrementing. So we don't release anything if you are not 100% sure that's going to work very well. That's something we learned after releasing some projects that didn't work well in the beginning. We thought, okay, let's only release if it works very well. But it's very straightforward. So we are not a huge company, so the teams are very close from each other. But that's how it works, like interviewing, collecting feedback from the users, and doing some user researches and prototyping and testing internally, and then release it to the public.
Cool.
Did I answer your question?
Question on this side?
Hey, I really liked all the projects that you guys are working on. Especially, I was interested in deep speech. I've been playing with some deep learning stuff. I'm curious, how is that going to be implemented? Like as an app developer, how can I use that deep learning to enable my website where people can have a conversation with the website essentially, right? And it can understand. As an app developer, how can I use that?
Yeah, so the to-go solution would be the Huawei Speech API for sure. Because it's a DOM API. It's going to be embedded in the browser itself. You're not going to be required to use any third-party libraries or JavaScript libraries. It's going to be in the browser itself. But if you are interested in using deep speech itself, you can both train your own models, which is more complicated, and you're going to demand you collect more data to train your own models. Or the deep speech team, Josh can explain better later, you have already some pre-trained models. You can just download and use the tooling for in your own system. So
are these models living in the browser, or do I have to ship them?
No, for the web speech API, it's going to be online. The goal
Web speech APIs, does it have deep learning capabilities?
in the cloud, yes. In the cloud. The way we are going to ship is you record your voice in the browser, and you process that in the cloud, like Google is doing, like the other projects are doing. But one of the ideas is to, after we ship this, is to run in the browser itself. And you're going to be able to, the inference is going to happen locally in your browser, like we are doing in the Web of Things Gateway. This is one of the projects that we are working on deep speech. So the model, you're going to install your model, you're going to go to the settings or something in Firefox, and say, okay, I want to, download the model for Brazilian Portuguese. Then I'm going to download that model, and it's going to, live in the browser, and the inference and the code is going to happen in the browser. That's the medium-term idea, but that's one of the goals.
First of all, I'm here. First of all, thanks for sharing those amazing projects. I really enjoyed your accent too. You can hear my accent too. So we're on the same page there. So my question is on the same page of that guy. So the why, right? So you made me thinking when you said to turn on the light, we need the voice, right? And so my question to you is like, can you share with us any critical use case in one of those projects where like voice really made the experience better for the users? And so adoption, you spoke about around 25-30% cross projects. So in this 30%, how many really business critical use case there are where they are using like the voice?
I can mention Firefox Reality, for sure, for many reasons. And one of them, it is the experience, you know, to retain the user, right? Like as I said, whether you typing in your VR environment, right? You have a VR browser in front of you, and when you type, what is the weather in San Francisco, right? So if we have 2 fingers, right, to control a VR, controller. You have only 2 fingers. It's already cumbersome with 10, right? Oh my God, For us as speech developers, we need to type something from you. This is old technology, right? So if you are using the Firefox, in this case, Firefox Reality, a VR browser, you have 2 fingers to type a long sentence. The user, they're going to give up. They're going to, try it twice, and that's it, right? So we found that after we released speech enabled with voice search in the browser itself, we managed to retain more users. We managed to retain more users because of this specific capability. And many of our vendors and partners, that's one of the first requirements from them. We need voice in the VR browser. So I mean hardware vendors, like head-mounted devices. So that's one of them. And Kathy wants to say something?
On the smart home, accessibility, so disabilities and handicap is where they are using private voice controllers the most already, sort of commercial stuff. And then ease of use, so somebody can set it up and they can use a smartphone or something, but somebody else would have an easier time using a voice interface. It's like the first thing you can do is talk, and the last thing you can do is talk, is the way it's described to me.
Okay, yeah, I was wondering because like even natural user interface to turn on the light is much faster as listening and speaking is not really the fastest thing that we do as humans. And so that's why I was wondering what was like, but you answered my question on this, and I get your point. Thanks.
I'm going to be around if any of you guys have questions.
Yes, if you guys have any more questions at the end, Andre will be here. If you guys, you can ask him directly, and I think there's some other Mozilla representatives in the audience, so they'll be here as well.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
So that was really cool. I hope you guys enjoyed that presentation. Now we have another exciting speaker. Dennis is coming to us from Dashbot. It's a conversational analytics platform, and he's got a really cool presentation to share with you guys. If you guys have any questions, we'll take them at the end, and then we can do that last. So welcome, Dennis.
Sweet. Thanks, Bianca. Thank you, Bot Society, for having me. I'm Dennis. I'm one of the co-founders of Dashbot. You can find me on Twitter, Dennis backwards. It's just Sind, and nicely available. And like I said, I'm one of the co-founders of Dashbot. We provide analytics for conversation. We launched a little over 2.5 years ago, and we are currently integrated with over 16,000 projects, which we're, thank you so much for those of you that are using us. So we launched in May of 2016. And to give you kind of a sense for how our space is growing since we launched, it took us 10 months to hit our first billion messages, and we were really excited about that. 6 weeks later, we hit our second billion. things were just starting to accelerate. And it's, my engineering team is awesome. When you get to actually scale a product, it's kind of exciting. And now we're doing, for every 2 weeks, we're doing about 1 billion messages. So it's just been going crazy. So it speaks to the power of the conversational interface. We processed to date over 63 billion messages. When I was working on the presentation last week for this, we only had 62. So I didn't go through and update all the screenshots. But it's been really exciting, and it really speaks to the power and growth of our entire industry. We cover Slack, Facebook, Kik, Google, Alexa, Twitter. We do really any conversational UI, anything that can be seen as like messages between two parties. We basically do. But why did we do this? This is probably obvious to hopefully most of us in this room. We sincerely believe that conversation is the next phase of human-computer interaction. The web took all this information that we've gathered as humans and placed it available online. Mobile put it into our pockets. And the next phase really is conversation. And it's kind of, I think Andres alluded to, conversation is really the interface that makes this information more accessible to more humans on the planet. And I think you mentioned it's the first interface we learn as humans and the last thing we use as we go out. So we're really excited about that. How did we get started? We actually were developing chatbots. We made a bot called GameMonk, which is actually a chatbot that plays games through Team on Slack. It's still pretty popular. We launched it. I think we're still on the front page of the bot Slack App Store. And after we built it, what we realized, we're number 22, but who's counting? We realized it was really hard to see. We made this bot, and we couldn't see what was actually happening. We found that traditional analytics really did not work well for conversations. They were designed for websites and mobile apps, and we tried to hook them up, and it just wasn't working. It was just it was a lot of work to do and to hook it up, and it was just kind of a big pain. It's the wrong paradigm to model conversations as a series of kind of events, in the same way that after the web analytics products were put out, when mobile happened, a lot of the mobile apps tried to use web analytics, and it wasn't quite right. Conversation is even more different than websites and mobile devices. So you're missing the conversation. You're missing the words that happen between your users and your application, because words they have meaning, and that's really, really important that you're losing when you kind of throw away the words of the conversation. So what I've really been learning over the past 2.5 years was that this conversational data that our users are exchanging between our application and the users is actually so much richer and more actionable than any of the web and mobile kind of analytics data that I had seen before. And that's why we built Dashbot. So what is conversational analytics? As you might expect, some of them is pretty standard. We do count users. This concept is, it existed before the web even. We make charts that tell you how many users are interacting with your voice application every single day. It's all on the technical side. It's all tied to a user ID. And I wanted to take kind of a technical aside here, because this is actually a pretty important change to the Google ecosystem. Those of you that are working on, I'm realizing this may be a little bit too technical, but Google is changing the way they do their user IDs. So make sure that your application, if you're developing, they've deprecated the anonymous user ID last year, and they will stop sending it as of May 31st. So this is actually quite important. There is a way to generate a UID and keep it in local storage, which is similar to a cookie. But if you're not doing either that or account linking, then I'm not sure what's going to happen to your application. So, side note. In terms of sessions, so once we have users interacting with your application, be that a website or a mobile app, we have this concept of a session. It was defined for us in the web world, as well as the mobile world, as a series of interactions with a timeout. Right? So in the web world, a user session was defined as kind of a series of interactions with your website with a 30-minute timeout. meaning they looked at your website, they left for 31 minutes, and they came back, new session. It made kind of sense because it was kind of an asynchronous, it wasn't like an open an application, like from the CD-ROM days or video game days, but they were actually kind of just sporadic flashes of activity between you and your users. So this is where this definition came from. In mobile, we saw that definition shift a little bit. 30-minute timeout seemed a little bit long, so we saw them, the mobile session definition shrink down to 15 minutes, because if you put your phone away for 15 minutes or don't interact with the application for that long, it feels like a new session. For voice, as well as chatbots, we've found that a 5-minute timeout seems to feel right when someone's interacting with your application in a conversation. If I'm talking with you, I leave for 5 minutes, feels like a new session, right? In voice in particular, you actually have other things that you can possibly do, like play an audio file, and then hit stop. And in that case, we actually increment the session length by the length of that particular audio file as well. So there's lots of different ways to think about session, but of course, we are an analytics company, so helping you understand how many users are speaking to your applications, as well as how long their sessions are spending in your application, is what we do. So we make charts. Pretty straightforward for analytics. Nothing surprising so far. We also do retention, all sorts of analytics, but that's actually not, so far we could actually probably do all this with our old analytics solutions. One kind of aside I want to take is like usability testing for these conversational applications. If you remember from the web days, we used to have to gather, from web and mobile, we would gather people into a room and we would watch them. And I used to love doing this, sitting behind a one-way mirror, and just watching them use your application, which was fascinating. You're like, please click on that button, and then they never do. You're like, come on, it's right there in front of you. So frustrating. We can now do the same thing with the conversational space. With chatbots, we have transcripts. So this is an actual transcript from one of my Game Monk sessions. Someone is saying, play categories, and they said, I guess the bot said, name as many car makers as you can in 60 seconds, starting now. And apparently this user hated this game, and they immediately said, stop. Our least popular game, as an aside, is name as many top venture capital firms as you can in the next 60 seconds. And everybody hates that game. And the top answer to that game is actually, people for some reason answer Google, which is not even, I guess they sort of are a venture capital firm, but anyway, I'm getting off the topic. So transcripts are amazing in the chatbot world. What about the voice world? Like, what does this actually mean when it comes to voice applications? Is there such a thing as transcripts? Well, the good thing is, for Alexa, the Alexa platform translates speech into intents, right? So we as developers, we in the ecosystem don't actually get the raw audio files. I'm actually fascinated to hear about the Mozilla platform to see if there's some raw audio files being transferred there, but that's, anyway, love what you guys are doing. So when you do this, when you transfer speech into intents, we can then essentially model, what we found is the same exact transcripts that we did for the chatbot transcripts work great for voice applications as well. And in this case, you can see here, I guess you can't really see, but the first message in from the user is a launch request intent. So for those of you that are developing at Alexa, that should be very familiar. The response is on the left-hand side from my Alexa application. In this case, this is a application with a multimodal, so you can see that I'm actually sending an image. And then the next message in from the user is the about intent. So they basically trigger the about intent, which then my skill responded. Dashbot is an analytics platform, whatever. So basically, what you can see here is that it resumes the natural back and forth experience that you would see kind of in the chat land, and then basically looking through this in the same way that you're able to garner really intimate understanding of how people are interacting with your chatbot or your website through a kind of an in-person interview, you're able to do that with voice applications as well. So the key lesson here is that reading transcripts really helps you build empathy for your users, and really helps you understand, and sometimes frustrate you, and you're like, why do you keep asking the same question over and over and over again? And we actually see the bulk of the time that our customers and our users spend in Dashbot is actually just reading transcripts. So that's one of the most valued things that people do when looking and understanding what their applications are doing. In terms of the top intent, so like I mentioned before, Amazon, you really can't see this, but we start to break down what are the top intents that your users are triggering as they're interacting with your application. And then for each of these intents, you can take a look at what are the entities. So for example, if your intent is a weather query, and I say, what's the weather like today in San Francisco? Your typical entities would be like location, or city would be San Francisco, and then maybe a date entity would be today. So understanding and really delving into the entities that are being passed to your intents is really, really invaluable to understanding what your users are actually doing in your voice application. We also want to take a look at conversation paths, and this is actually interesting to understand from the standpoint of a voice application. We see two big kind of buckets of voice applications. One is what I would call a one-shot application, which is essentially you fire off the application, it answers a question, and then it's done. We are now seeing kind of more and more multi-turn conversations, especially I was talking to Victoria earlier today. On your Google Home, you can enable a setting, which is continue the conversation. So after every single response, you don't have to say, okay, Google, ask so-and-so again for a thing. So I think that Google understands the concept of this multi-turn conversation. In Alexa, you can also leave the application open. And we're starting to see conversations increase in terms of multi-turnness. And you can imagine, from what we see in chatbot land, voice application conversations are much shorter than in chatbot. But that would make sense why. And the lesson here, of course, is to really pay attention to the way you've designed your intents and your entities to make sure that your users are using your application as expected. And then one side note here is that as you're designing your intents, there's a few ways to design your intent ontologies. If you have an intent called everything intent, which basically you pump everything into and then you try and pull out all sorts of different entities, it may be very difficult to really start to siphon off users and see what they're doing, and it also might make the actual design of those intents more difficult. So what about the Google side? The nice thing about the difference between the Google platform and the Amazon platform is that in Google land, they take this audio speech, they convert it to text, and they then also map it to intent. And the awesome thing is in the transcripts, you can see them. You're seeing the words. This is awesome. And why is this awesome? Is because whereas we love both platforms, of course, but in this case, you can actually see, for example, in this first message, the user to invoke our application said talk to Dashbot voice. This is then mapped to our default welcome intent. And then below it says, I said show me a list, and you actually can see show me a list. So we are now seeing the actual user's words as translated through Google's speech engine, of course, and the mapping of these words to intents. So what can you actually do with this? If you look at your intents, you'll have an intent, for example, called love, and then underneath it, you can see all of the different ways that people have actually invoked this intent. So Google actually is multimodal, so you can actually see some emojis in there as well, which is kind of funny. But the other really interesting one is the unknown intent, or what we also call not handled. So this is actually all of the ways that your users have been talking to your application that your application does not understand. So this is super interesting to take a look at. So what are some of these key intents that we see across all the applications that are really important to look at? The one I mentioned before was the welcome intent. So here's a bunch of examples of how people possibly could be invoking your application. And in the Google ecosystem, it's awesome because you can see, maybe, so in this example, my action is called weather report. So sometimes people said talk to weather report, there's launch weather report, can you give me the weather? There are some random ones that we see, like sometimes they'll just say like, what's the potato like? And then for some reason, Google's engine will send that request over to application. We're not really quite sure why, which I predict there will be kind of a burgeoning version of SEO, right? So since Google and Amazon will be kind of arbitrating these random requests to all of your applications, they're trying to give all of us ways and signals to tell Google that, hey, like my application is the best answer when someone says, ask the weather report. What's the weather going to be like for tomorrow? So it's very fascinating to see how this ecosystem will develop. So the welcome intent, as you analyze the ways that people are invoking your application, will tell you how the users are actually finding you. On the other side is the not handled intent. So these are all of the things that someone said to your bot, or sorry, your skill or action that you did not understand what to do. So typically the answer here is like, I'm sorry, could you repeat that again? Or I'm sorry, could you tell me your name? Or basically a reprompt of some sort. And I think the not handled intent is great for understanding how users are confused. So if your skill or action asks your user, please tell me what city you're in, and basically they respond with an answer that is completely not expected, that's telling you that your users are confused. Another way to think of this is your not handled intent is actually what your users want to get from your application. So it's an amazing place to take a look at and dig in and say, I thought I wanted to build a weather application, but everyone is asking me about what I should wear tomorrow, right? And maybe that's an opportunity as I'm digging through all of the responses that I did not understand to kind of guide my roadmap into what to build next. So the lesson here is really when you dig into these intents in users, your messages, you can really learn a ton. And of course, at this point, I kind of want to take just one mini step back. With any conversational UI, the work really begins after you launch. And this is hopefully familiar to a lot of us that have been doing design and launching in a while. The typical application development cycle is you design, and then you launch it, and then you're hopefully not done here, because your job is just beginning. After you launch, you want to make sure to learn from what you've launched, and then design. So, this kind of virtuous cycle goes around and around and around. So how do you actually maximize this learning? I feel like another way to look at this is, there are two types of errors that we really see when designing voice applications. I mentioned these before, not handled. Not handled really is the users telling you in their own words what they want to do. And then the other one to look at is actually misclassified messages. So in this case, you can see here, we have a whole bunch of messages that are saying, okay, thank you. This last one, which is cool, thank you, for some reason it hit our small talk intent instead of our thank you intent. So this is a great way to kind of dig through your reports to understand that, hey, I think thank you was working here. Why did cool thank you actually render with the small talk intent? And it basically allows us to understand like misclassified messages, leverage all of the ones you did right to understand the ones you got wrong. But like I mentioned before, like what Alexa doesn't have text. What we're seeing more and more of is that people are developing solutions for multiple platforms. And my kind of resounding recommendation is that these conversational interfaces should be deployable across all platforms, right? So the logic, the conversations should be transferable between different platforms. So the key lesson here is to really share lessons across platforms. So the learnings you get from the exact messages you get on Google should inform your overall application development on the other platforms. So what else? So basically, your application also hopefully has a goal. Understanding the funnels with which people get to that goal is super, super important. In this case, this is an application where it was about a movie. So users could ask about a movie. A key performance indicator of this particular application would be, out of the 2007 users that interacted with the application, it looks like 83% did the desired behavior, and 17% did not. And by understanding this, you can really dig in and say, what are the different paths that they took to this goal, and design for and optimize and tune. Because if you don't have a goal and you don't define a key objective measure of your success, you actually won't know if you're actually doing a good job or not. We also provide a bunch of benchmarking reports. One of the biggest questions we would get after working with customers was, after I launch my product, how am I doing? So we allow you to compare your usage as well as your retention with across the rest of the ecosystem that we cover. So in this case, we give you a benchmarking understanding of your average new user retention, for example, was in the 50th percentile or in the 20th percentile compared to other similar skills in the ecosystem. Day one, week one, month one, et cetera. By platform as well. And then also device capabilities. So more and more, I have an Echo Show sitting at my desk, which has both a voice interface as well as a screen. So you should really be taking a look at and understanding, in the same way that we used to look at browser types or mobile devices, device capabilities as well in this across your user base. And we like to model it as 3 buckets. One is users with audio-only devices. The other one is users with only display-capable devices. And then the third bucket is users with both. Because in both Google and Alexa, if the same user accesses your application, from the speaker in the morning, and then maybe they have a show in the kitchen, we'll see that same user hit your application twice, and then they'll be in that third bucket, which is both screen devices and audio devices. And as we're seeing here, this is actually a pretty typical distribution we see, where most users are in audio, and then you have a kind of a second bucket of display capable, and the smallest bucket is with both. So our guidance here is really be designing voice first, but with multimodal in mind. So when you do have a screen, it should be an enhancement to the experience and not a requirement. So your skill should not be saying, take a look at the screen, because probably most of your users don't have a screen. But if they do have one, it should be an enhancement. And then finally, another way to look at this entire sphere of analytics and understanding is through user analytics. So if you imagine the entire cube of data that we have, which is all of your conversational data, that's kind of modeled around the messages and interactions between your application and your users, we take that cube and turn it on its ear, and we get what we call our audience builder. This is essentially a view of the entire universe of your users that have interacted with your application. And what can you do with this view? You can basically say, cool, out of the 13,000 users, since you are good and you did account linking and you have awesome additional metadata about your users, you can say how many were female that searched for a movie that's based on an intent, that bought a ticket, and let's say in the US, and part of my A/B test group A. So with this, you can really understand and narrow and winnow down the understanding of who is actually performing the desired behaviors within your application. And then from this resulting data set of users, you can filter by intent, sessions, messages, activity date, locale, demographics. What are you going to do with this? Typically in chatbot land, you would actually be able to rebroadcast them in Facebook, for example. But voice, that's not possible. However, more and more so, we're seeing voice being an integral part of an omni-channel strategy. So most people, especially when you do account linking, are developing relationships with your customers and deepening them in this voice channel, and then reapplying the activity that they see within this voice channel back into their entire customer ecosystem and customer understanding. So that's really a key lesson, is that we're not just building kind of siloed applications just for voice. It should play into a larger part of the customer relationship. So that's just a very quick summary of what is super important to understand and pay attention to as you're developing your voice applications. And to close, just to say, conversation without listening is just shouting. So, and I'm Dennis, and just thank you so much for having me today. And on Twitter at Sin, or just find me after. Thank you so much. And one last thing, we are hosting our 3rd annual Superbot conference here in San Francisco. Would love for you all to attend. You can use my personal code DennisRocks for 25% off. We'd love to see you all there. It was the past 2 years have been an amazing gathering of conversational designers and companies and brands, and would love to see you there as well. So thank you so much, and thanks for having me.
So I can, one sec, guys.
So I can personally attest to the amazing success that Superbot was. I had an amazing time there. I started in conversation design just 1 year ago, and I met so many amazing people, and I'm really looking forward to meeting you guys as well. We're gonna take 3 questions for Dennis specifically, and then we'll bring Andre back up and have you ask questions to them both if they go beyond 3. I'll try to use this the way it's meant to be used, so you guys can throw it around. Either any questions to begin with?
Thank you. This is fascinating. So for applications where you do have the raw voice data, it seems like it would be very handy to do kind of tonal and kind of basically some sort of vocal tone analysis, especially in terms of user feedback and potentially even for the app itself.
Yes.
Is that something that you guys do or have any recommendation for?
So the platform is currently built around kind of text, right? But I would love to talk to you about which signals that you would have as part of having that raw audio file. We do sentiment on the text itself. So we have other ways to incorporate signal into the analytics that we provide. So, if tone is like a numeric measure or a multidimensional thing, like we should definitely chat because I'd be fascinated to see what we could do.
Cool. Thank you.
Any more questions? No questions? Okay. Oh, yeah.
So you talked about the intent parser, and yeah, we're familiar with the intent parser. But the problem we had with the like Alexa and Google and dealing with them as processing points is they want you to use their intent parser, not your own. And they assume you are a giant company in which you have one interface, and we wanted to connect up all the users to the interface themselves, which would mean every single homeowner would have to create their own AWS account or Alexa account or whatever it is, which doesn't scale. So have you found anything that helps that problem?
So the question is kind of like Google and Amazon essentially are centralizing the platform, right?
If people wanted to experiment with sort of conversational IoT, and you needed to go to the cloud to do that, how would you do that on an individual basis?
So I think, if I'm understanding the question right, the ecosystems as I would say they have developed today, which is Google and Amazon owning essentially that platform, is very different than what we saw from the web days, right? So where essentially everyone was interconnected, and you can essentially deploy solutions kind of without one central orbiting body having control over everything. I think to answer the short answer for your question is if there are applications deployed directly on, for example, a web server, interacting, doing their own kind of voice, speech to text, and doing their own intent resolution. I'm really excited to actually talk to you more about this because that to me is more the architecture of the original web, which is there's no one place to take it all down, and there's no kind of one gatekeeper for that data and information. We would love to play in that type of an ecosystem where you could just send us the speech or the text directly, and we don't have to be beholden to the ways that the platforms are working. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I guess the short answer is that if this continues to grow, which it sounds like it's kind of starting to pick up, that would be amazing. And that's I think we love being kind of a third-party analytics provider to be able to provide that solution.
Any other questions for Dennis? Okay. Thank you so much, Dennis.
Cool. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, cool. Okay, so I wanted to close this up for you guys. Thank you so much for coming out. Again, I'm Bianca from Bot Society. If you are a user experience designer or you're really focused on design and you just want some cool content or tips, I definitely encourage you to check out Design the Future on YouTube. It's a video series where we go into leading companies like Google, TED, Vox Media, Rhode Island School of Design, all of these cool companies, and really question how they're approaching conversation design. It's something that's very new and a lot of people don't have experience with it. So if you're looking for somewhere to get started, we also have UX workshops. Definitely reach out to me. If you're interested in becoming a user experience mentor and you're looking to mentor people on their voice applications, that's also something we're exploring right now. Beyond that, if you have any type of conversational scenario and you need to design for that, I encourage you to check out Bot Society. And thank you so much for coming. We're going to bring Andre back up for a few more questions. I think a few more of you guys had questions. If not, feel free to mingle and network amongst yourselves. And thank you guys again. How many more questions do we have for Andre? None? None? Okay. Everybody can network. You guys can enjoy. We're not kicking you out just yet, so feel free to meet people, introduce yourself, and I'll be around if you have any questions.
I have a message.
Yes.
Open your computer and install Firefox, please, right now.